assignment. So your assignment is to create an environmental portrait which illustrates one of two things: a metamorphosis or a fabrication. The metamorphosis, you're going to create a portrait of yourself or someone you know which combines or blends the figure into something else, right? In this case, I took my screaming head and put it on the body of my goddaughter. A fabrication is a recreation of a notorious or famous event. Combine your own imagery with another artist or photographer's interpretation of the event. The subject matter should be revised in a way that changes or challenges traditional interpretation. The process. So when we talk about steps, about what we're doing, we're going to start by doing those Photoshop Linda exercises, those tutorials, right? So you're going to do those assigned tutorials. As you're doing the tutorials, you're collecting imagery and brainstorming about what is it that I'm going to make and what are the sources that I'm going to draw from. Then you're going to develop that into 5 to 10 thumbnails. And those thumbnails are due next week. And once we go over your thumbnails in class next week, you will be able to work on a marker comp either in class or outside of class next week or at home. And when I say marker comp, crayon, pencil, whatever it is, I just want you to be able to show me quickly what you're going to try to accomplish in Photoshop. And even if you're great in Photoshop, yes, I want you to do that quick color comp. You could do it on your iPads if you want to. I'm totally fine with that as well. Then we're going to scan and correct images, and then we're going to create a final rendering. Just a reminder at the bottom, you must scan one image using the formula. You could scan more using the formula, but at least one.
I'm sorry, what's a quick marker?
So just a quick color version, like how we did the inks.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's going to be that, but use color. So whatever color you have, crayon, pencil, pen. So some creative solutions by students. Let's start with fabrication. So this student was getting married. It's a really, I'll never forget the story. She was very open about this situation. So this is the student. She put herself into the scream. This is her. This is her fiance. And this is her very good friend that was in my class.
Oh, no.
Right.
Drama.
And this was her engagement ring tied to a string up in the foreground. And the incorporation of money. I don't know. You do the math. Now, two people who did exactly the same thing, one more successful than the other. Which one? The left one. Why? Absolutely. So there's actually a suspension of disbelief that happens here by the way that these things are attached. Would you agree? So with that suspension, this artist took the original characters and put them up in the window looking out. Took her boyfriend's tool, the guitar, her tool, the camera, put a little cameo here of her grandmother, replace the cameo that was there, and really just made a much more believable faux of the original painting, right? This is not, anybody can get Photoshop and throw a bunch of stuff together. Everybody can do that. You don't need to go to college to do that, right? We're aiming for this. Not this literally, but right? To fool people. This is your cousin's piece. I knew I had one of her pieces in here. Yeah. Have you seen this before? Okay. So this is Erin, right? You said Erin Metcalf is your cousin?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is Erin's piece. And so she took this piece by Vincent van Gogh, and then she created all of these different elements and you might know who these people are, I don't know. So she created all these different elements, and she wanted to show the seasons through the painting, right? So going from summer, so she took all of this stuff out of there and added the little character here. She created the little snowstorm and the little snowmen in the background there and the snow kind of falling, and put the Christmas tree on the roof and the little characters playing in the snow. She put another little kid over here playing in the leaves, and she created, this I think is the part that I love the most about it, is she created this very Van Gogh-esque tree from the regular tree that's in the original painting. When you do something like this, having that comparison of the original and the one you did, especially when you do a good job with it, is really important, right? This also a pretty famous painting. This particular artist, this is the 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 artist. So she put herself in at all different levels as all the different characters, which, you know, took a lot of work. I especially love her as Shirley Temple, right here in the front. It is so creepy and so great all at once. So this is a beautiful piece, also, you know, from an original painting, but then with realistic elements built in. And compositionally, it's more than what it might seem. So the student took her actual palette from painting and put it in here and skewed it so that it looked like it was sitting on the table. This is the artist. This is her mother who passed. This is her poor puppy dog that passed while she was working on this. That was the saddest part of it. And then, I'm not gonna be able to find it anymore. I think it's this one. No, yeah, it's both of these. So she did a recreation of a Van Gogh painting, and then this is her actual painting from painting class. And so she scanned those in and put them on the wall, right? So it goes a little bit deeper. And this very well may have been one of her paintings as well. Anyone know what this is a reference to?
Escher.
Yep. So it's an MC Escher etching. And so this student took all of the photographs and rebuilt the composition, like all in current photography. This was a tribute, that's the artist in Alice in Wonderland, and this is Tony Blair, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain when this piece was made. Nobody knew who he was. But it's just a really fun piece, a really fun incorporation of lots of different elements into the table, into the piece. And just the more you look, the more you find all of the little signifiers, right, from the story itself. Stephen! This is Cold Night's piece from last semester. Again, taking a famous painting and bringing all of the little, I don't know what to call them other than, are they Marvel minis? Yeah. Right? So bringing them all sort of into the piece and still giving them that painterly feeling, but kind of tying all of those things together. And, you know, really paying attention to how the artist depicted shadows, and now how do I depict shadows, right? I like Hulk splashing into the water. So this was Seth Lambert's piece last year. He did, is it Doctor Who? Who is this? Is that what it's called?
Dr. Strangelove?
Yeah, maybe Dr. Strangelove. There you go. But actually put different people from the government in, current government in, as different people in the picture. And put different images in the background, but still kept the original idea. This student replaced herself as Shulk on the front of the Incredible Hulk cover. And this is Dominic Camiso from last year. He did the Beatles, but he replaced all their heads with dogs and called it the Treatles. Metamorphosis. Some of these are really quite old, but every year I switch things in and out, and some I just can't get rid of. I think conceptually this might be one of my favorites. So Anne was a student of mine who was actually a horticulture student who then became a graphic design student after this class. And so she created this piece, and all of those little thistles are members of her family because she feels like they're all very prickly, and I think that's so funny. I just can't get over how funny I think that is. This is a piece actually done in 1998. But so we had none of the tools that you have now. But this student did a really cool. So she had aunts that were twins, and so she did this as sort of an ancestor tribute, where the wolf is howling, right, and then the spirits of these elements are coming out of this moon, which actually shows her face in the moon. The devil and the angel. The carrots falling from the sky. I often laugh about this piece because this was when I was teaching at Oswego, and this woman, Jody Benedict, had just graduated from FLCC, and so she's like, can I just scan the picture for my FLCC ID? And who would have known that 2 years later I'd be teaching here? Just a weird serendipitous thing. But it's this really strange idea that really works because she creates these reflections. It could never really happen, but it feels like it could happen because of how she renders it. Super, super creepy. And every time I look at this, all I can think is when I first saw this from a distance in print, I thought that this was when you're driving down 390 towards Henrietta, towards Greece. You can kind of see the city in the background. I totally thought that's what it is. It's actually just a graveyard that looks like a cityscape. And so I always found that really interesting, that sort of juxtaposition of the graveyard and the city and the money and right? There's lots going on in this image, however disturbing it might be. Personal narrative, a really beautiful picture done by a student, Casey Feeney. All of the photography is her own original photography and then combined and edited to create this composition. Is Lonnie here? No? So some of you may know Lonnie. She did this beautiful piece last semester where she took a picture. I can't even remember now if it was of her or of her sister. It's one of them. And then she kind of combined or metamorphosized herself into the tiger lady. This was a piece done by a student. This, again, was way back when, my first year teaching. But I keep this one in there because what it actually is this is the student as a child. This is the student's father who died really unexpectedly. And so the poem around the outside is a poem that they just happened to find tucked into one of his books, which was pretty much about death, which is always kind of a strange thing. So I also like this one because it has a very limited palette, right? So, we can be overwhelmed by color. So we have to really be careful, especially in Photoshop where anything can happen very quickly, right? That we really think about what does the intention of our color tell our viewer. I love this piece of the aqueduct and the elephant just kind of dancing down the aqueduct with the little devil duckies swimming. What I find really intriguing about it is that, this is in Rochester, but yet right now it's in Egypt, which is kind of neat.
So with that aspect of the project, it says you can pick any kind of event or anything like that. Could it just be a picture like that where it's just a place, not necessarily an event?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. As long as you challenge the original and show us the original.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. This is another really beautiful piece. This is a graduate student from Oswego who took my class, which was an undergraduate class, as part of her graduate work. And I really like this because she was doing a series of a series of nudes, because her discipline was photography. But she took this picture from the subway in New York City, and she took a bunch of these forbs, and she created just this very almost ghost-like, but almost implying the movement and the humanness. There's just so much going on, and such a delicate look at the composition itself. and how things break or don't break or almost break or totally break the border, and how that creates that circle of movement. Another really strong piece. So again, this is another one of those strange stories that I'll never forget, and partially because she visually tells it so well. So this is this woman, right? This is the mother of the student. This is the student as a child, where she traveled on a bus with her mom, who was like traveled around as a hippie, like, you know, going to music festivals. That was like her life when she was very, very little. And her one prized possession in this box was a rainbow crayon, which back then, now you can find them everywhere, but they didn't really have them anywhere, right? So we took a piece of saran wrap. We went down to the cafeteria. We said, can we borrow a big piece of saran wrap? We put it down on the scanner. We shredded up a bunch of crayon parts, and she moved them all over, and she made a scan just of the crayon parts to lay over the whole thing. And then she took this picture. This is her mother and her daughter. Her mother also died really unexpectedly, and when they opened her nightstand drawer, there was this little book, Preparation for Death, in the drawer. And so she scanned in that and cut this section out of it, put the little white balloon that the little child is kind of chasing, and she wanted to show here how her mother was kissing and giving to, and also sucking, you know, like that sort of interaction of new life and life that's leaving. So a really beautiful depiction that kind of shows that whole cycle of life. Be careful, all right? Just because you can cut and paste yourself 100 times doesn't make it a good idea, right? If each of these had been a different pose, it might not be quite as annoying. Just saying. He seriously looks like Harry Potter, but the strength of this piece is not him putting himself in here, right? There's not a whole lot that challenges this composition. He put a book in his hand, he put his dog in the picture, and he put some stuff on here, but it doesn't really challenge, right? He doesn't make himself look like the painting. He doesn't make the dog look like the paint. You see what I'm saying? Like, you got to go that level beyond. And this is such a cool piece. The color correction is terrible. And he just, like, didn't care. Right? And I swear to God, if he saw this today, he would just be appalled that he even did it, because he went on to do really great things. So, get organized, stay organized. This PDF is going to be up on Blackboard. On your project sheet, there is a picture of the folder structure that I'm expecting you to employ. And although I will do little demos along the way, you have this. I want you to set it up right from the start. Much like in Illustrator, if you've never used Photoshop before, or if you have, we're going to really look to employ lots of layers. This is a beautiful example, this piece by Jana Chernow, and you can see that not only are her layers well organized, so here's the actual layered version, a gazillion years ago, no less, but you can see that even in those layers, right, we can tell where everything is and how it happens. This helps you to be, what's the word I'm looking for? To be efficient while you're working. So you're not searching for, where did I put that? Where, you know, you've got everything right here, and then you can make whatever changes you need to make with it. The other thing is folder structure. Some of you are doing really great with this, and some of you, we need to work on this. So the success of this project has a lot to do with planning. So this is the folder structure that I will expect submitted at the end of the project. You'll have a build folder. You'll have a corrected images folder. You'll have a scans or captures folder. So everything that you photograph, scan, download, whatever it is, all of the originals will go in here. When you correct them, they'll go in here. I even built this out to help guide you in this PDF, that anything in your build folder should be RGB, 300 resolution, layered. that anything in your corrected images should be a .tiff file, CMYK, and 300 resolution. That in the scans captures, you can have TIFFs or JPEGs. Either one is fine. You should not have raw files here. You should save them either as JPEGs or TIFFs so that they're not taking up a ton of room. And then your two final files, I'm going to require you to have two final files that you bring to print or that you submit. One is going to be a .pdf, which will be CMYK, and it'll be press quality and flattened. And one will be a TIFF that'll be CMYK, 300 resolution, and flattened. You'll use the PDF if you're printing to matte paper at the end of the project, and you'll use the TIFF if you're printing to photo paper. Now, I want you to think as you develop this and start to make it, what kind of part of the choice for this project will be what kind of paper you print it on, okay? So thinking about as you make the art, if you print something on photo paper, it looks more like a photo. So if you're trying to make something that's photorealistic and real looking like a photo, you probably want to print to photo paper. If you're doing something that's more sort of art oriented, then you might prefer that it go on a more matte paper, right? So I want us to start really thinking about the type of paper that we're putting stuff on. So that's the end.